From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode 498. I am Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on X. Joining me as always, my co-host Derek, DP3 in our forum, and DP3G and DP384 on X. Derek, good to be on here talking to you as always. What's new?
Andrew, we have to kick this episode off with a D's Deals feature.
D's Deals. Been a while.
So I wanted an extra PC in case one of our desktops go down. We have like a main desktop big tower PC that we use for, most of our gaming. And, it's what we play 2K17 on, 2K19, 2K24, 2K14, the classics like Live 06, Live 2003, Live 2000, etc. But I wanted a backup. And I am blown away by this find. So it's an Ace Magician dual LAN mini gaming PC with an AMD Ryzen 7 5800U processor, up to 4.4 gigahertz, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, 512 gigabyte NVMe solid state drive. And again, this is a mini PC. And it has 4 USB ports, built-in Wi-Fi, etc. Guess how much I paid for this, Andrew?
So this is tough because I've got to think in US dollars, and that's about, the Australian dollar buys about 67 US cents. So I'm guessing around 300, 350?
So a little bit less, actually.
Wow.
So I ended up paying $284 for this. And I want to tell you why this is a great deal. Right now, it's on Amazon for $299. Still a good deal. This mini PC, which is the size of a calculator, Andrew, and it weighs as much as a calculator. This thing is the easiest thing to move around. This little monster is able to run 2K17, 2K19, 2K15, 2K16, etc. on medium settings, which is basically comparable to console, at smooth 60 FPS, 1080p. And I am just absolutely floored by this because I didn't think that these mini PCs could handle PS4, especially at this price, because there's more powerful versions of mini PCs. But I didn't think these mini PCs under $300 could handle PS4 titles at such a beautiful quality.
That's impressive.
Ridiculous. And we can hook it up, so HDMI to our 50-inch TV and play those games. It is the perfect backup emergency PC. And right now it's actually sitting in our bonus/guest room. But if we ever need it, we can just grab this PC that weighs as much as a calculator, as the size of the calculator, just up to our main room, plug it in. We don't lose any gaming time. And like I said, the 4 USB ports, in one of the ports, I have the wireless USB dongle that allows the Xbox One wireless controllers to connect. I have an extra USB hard drive. That way it can store highlights and whatnot. It works great. This mini PC works great with Action Recorder to be able to record highlights in smooth 1080p at 60 FPS. And it's just, I can't even tell you how awesome this thing is. So I highly recommend it. If you want to get into PC gaming, you don't have a lot of space, or you don't want to take up a lot of space with your machine, and you want to play, the PS4 gen titles and prior, this is an amazing deal. And for certain games that don't work that awesome on it, so a game, let's say, I don't know, a game like Wild Hearts, which is a PS5 title, if you scale it down to 720p, which looks good on a lot of the smaller monitors out there, the game still can run smooth. And like I said, I'm just floored by it. Anybody who's in the market for, a desktop PC on a budget, this is amazing. It's like I said, it's the size of a calculator, weighs as much as a calculator.
And this is something to keep in mind. If you are coming from console, you want more of an entry-level PC, or you want to do some retro gaming, obviously it's obviously a great option. And some people say, medium settings and 720p. What is this, 2005? And again, entry level, or as you have it, a backup. Because if your main desktop goes down, obviously you're going to get that fixed or replaced. But in the meantime, you can still game, which is obviously why you have it. So as a backup or an entry level PC, yeah, that's a really good price for a decently powerful machine for at least, again, those purposes.
Yeah, the other thing is, too, is the 720p, I've only had to do that on one of the PS5 titles. As far as, like, the 2Ks, like 2K17, 2K19, haven't even tried 2K24 yet, but I'm sure it will work just fine on it. The 2K16, 15, etc., that is all on 1080p at 60 FPS on medium settings. The games look amazing. They work amazing, etc. For other titles out there like Borderlands, like Dragon's Dogma, games like that, like those are just all work pristine. Devil May Cry, stuff like that. So definitely recommend it. 500 gigabyte NVMe drive. That's a really fast drive as well. The everything loads up incredibly fast. And you have all those USB ports. So if you want to, like I said, have an extra hard drive attached to save highlights or to install games on and all of that, you could, get one of those. So definitely recommend it. However, I do want to point out, Andrew and I, on my main computer, where I hosted using Parsec, did have 2 sessions this week. We played NBA 2K13 using the incredible URB roster. And we were the Bulls versus the Suns in the epic 92-93 matchup, which was the finals that year. And we also played NBA in the Zone 2 using the EPSXE emulator for a PlayStation. And we were the Seattle Supersonics versus the Denver Nuggets. Both of these sessions were a blast.
Always fun to connect. And now that you're settled in a new place, and congratulations once again, we have been able to connect a little bit more often and line up our schedules to do that. And revisiting both those games, absolute blast, as you said. 2K13 still holds up very well. I did struggle a little bit because I was trying to move a little bit like it was NBA 2K14 for PS4. Some of the side-to-side movement is not as speedy, so I did get beaten on a couple of plays, unfortunately. But yeah, it holds up so well. That URB roster has been made with so much love, so much attention to detail. You compare these things to MyNBA Eras, and we'll come back to that in a sec. But just so much work went into that roster, and UBR and all these other projects, and of course Thunder Shack with his Ultimate Retro roster for NBA 2K20. And your Ultimate Classic Teams roster for 2K17. You put that love and attention to detail into those rosters, and these games just play even better than with the vanilla rosters. And NBA in the Zone 2 is a game that I overlooked back in the day, but have really come to enjoy. I do own it as well, and that's a really fun one to connect on, not just for the novelty of fake Shaq, fake Jordan, and fake Buckley, of course, although that is always fun to see, but it's that sim arcade hybrid that I wrote about in last week's Monday Tip-Off, actually, that I've really come to enjoy. And back in the day, Derek, I probably would have turned my nose up at it because I wanted my 5-on-5 games to be more and more realistic, which is something that happened, obviously, with the genre. But I think I wouldn't have appreciated it as much back in the day because of my own preference for NBA Live and preference for what 5-on-5 basketball, virtual basketball, should have been, in my view. So I'm glad that I've been able to discover that later with a more open mind and have these fun sessions.
So we'll get back to the NBA 2K13 session in a second. Yeah, let's talk about NBA in the Zone 2. I played a ton of this back in the day.
Yes.
I finished seasons on this game. I loved using the Detroit Pistons and whatnot with Grant Hill and Joe Dumars, etc. And so I had a little bit more enjoyment from this game historically than you did. But obviously the experience is going to be better with another human, which is why you probably even had more fun with it this time around, because it was, with me and we were able to play co-op.
I never played it back in the day because I didn't have a PlayStation. So it wasn't until I started collecting in recent years that I actually played it for the first time.
What's the first team you threw on the floor in that game? Now, the game came out in 1996, so I'm guessing you threw the fake Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
From the Bulls on the floor in the starting lineup, and that was your first team, correct?
It was, yeah. I think I might have I don't know if I edited his jersey to 23 straight away because it is 83 by default. I don't know if I did that, but I definitely played Bulls versus Sonics. I think it was the first game I played. Pretty sure that was the first game I played because, of course, how can you go past the fake Jordan that is absolutely Jordan? It's his face. It's his face, and they got in trouble for it, and you can see why, because it is absolutely MJ and Barkley and Shaq.
It might be the best cyber face in the game, the Jordan one.
Funnily enough.
It looks exactly like him. But that Sonics team that you mentioned, the one that we used in this session, how fun are they? I mean, they got Hersey Hawkins on this team, who was a 20-point scorer in his career. They got the glove, Gary Payton, who's just great on both ends and can knock down threes and whatnot. They have Detlef Schrempf, who, when the line was moved in, shot like 53% on a decent amount of attempts from beyond the arc. And then he's super versatile, and he's 6'10", and you can do a bunch of stuff with him, including that tip dunk off of his own S3 that was in the top 10 this week that I was able to do. And then obviously you have Sean Kemp, who they jump on pump fakes more for him, and he's just throwing down all of these awesome dunks and whatnot. And it's just a super fun team. But our bench in that game, Andrew, was heroic. The amazing play from Eggs, Craig Elo, who scored in the double figures, and Hakeem the Dream McLevain, Jim McLevain, who was doing Hakeem-esque moves and hitting some mid-range shots and cleaning up misses and throwing it down and whatnot. Those two specifically. But, our bench really came through. Even Steve Scheffler had some nice plays.
Oh, J-Mac was on the attack. I mean, we had that block with him that's what he did. If there was one thing that Jim McElvain did, it was block shots more often than he grabbed rebounds, infamously. But in that game, he was getting the boards. He was making jumpers. He was backing down. We were able to back down opponents and just dunk on their heads or make these great hooks and turn around jump shots. It was really fun to do that. Elo came up huge, as you said. Scheffler, what an incredible six-man in that game at least. But it's funny because we were kind of dogging on the bench. We were saying, this is a horrible bench squad compared to the starting lineup. Night and day between the starting five and the bench on the Sonics. And yet, the bench came through, big time.
Yeah, it was awesome. And we had to play them quite a bit because of the way stamina works in that game, right? So we played 6-minute quarters on one of the higher difficulty levels. And that video is up on YouTube, folks. On the NLSC YouTube, that gameplay. It's a 13-minute video that gives you the full game highlights. But we did have to lean on the bench a lot, including down the stretch at the beginning of the fourth quarter and whatnot, while the starters rested up. And the team that we played against, the Nuggets, they're no slouch in that game because they have LaFonso Ellis and Antonio McDyess and the tip dunking phenom Tom Hammonds.
Wow, yeah.
In that game, had about 4 tip dunks on our heads, and he was really tough to stop. But then they also have shooters like Bryant Stith and whatnot. That Nuggets team was a really good challenge for us. But the things that I like best about NBA in the Zone 2, and I talked to you about this after we had our session. One, the block shots. How satisfying are those?
Big swats.
They're loud. They're big swats. They're not canned. They are awesome.
Off the board, too. Did you notice that they swatted off the board? That was very rare back in that era. A lot of blocks clipped through the backboard, but they swatted off the glass.
Yeah, they were doing a lot of really good things with the In the Zone series. And NBA In the Zone 2 did add some really cool gameplay elements that were not in the original. One of the other things that I love about that game were the spinning shots. And you'll see that in that highlight video where you can catch, do a pump fake spin move. And then while you're in the air, kind of contort your body but keep your shooting form. And it looks so cool on jump shots. It's like what you'd see MJ do in real life, or Kobe, etc., or Mitch Richmond and whatnot. It looks awesome. And then the other favorite gameplay feature in that game is the tip dunks. How awesome is it to run into the paint, time your jump off of the miss, and just catch the ball mid-air and throw it down? Such a cool part of that game. And I read some reviews from back in the day, Andrew, about NBA in the Zone 2. And some of the bigger reviewers, some of the bigger companies that were reviewing games at the time were saying, this is the game. If you want NBA action, this is the game to pick up. And it would list the reasons why they believe it was advantageous to do so over NBA Live. Sure, it's a sim arcade hybrid game. I mean, we hit 2 or 3 shots over the backboard with Gary Payton.
Yeah.
Sam Perkins had a tip dunk, which was spectacular, but his entire body was behind the backboard, and his right arm was through the backboard. And
it happened.
He tipped it.
Yeah, back in the day. It happened in those games.
It happens a lot in the Zone 2. And just overall, it is definitely even more arcade than live at the time. But it works. It was a great option in the space.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it to somebody who wanted a bit more authenticity in the gameplay. Live was still king at that time, I will say. NBA Shootout as well was perhaps a little bit more leaning towards that realistic direction. But I think that NBA in the Zone 2 is a very accessible game for both sim and casual gamers alike. Your more hardcore sim. I mean, back in the day, hardcore sim heads weren't quite as passionate in the way that they would become as expectations grew with games getting better and better and more sophisticated, obviously. But we still wanted to see a bit more realism than NBA in the Zone 2 provides. But at the same time, I can see why they'd be making that recommendation, because I do think it does appeal to everyone in a way that Live perhaps doesn't, because Live was a bit more slow-paced, going for more realism there, not as action-packed, where everybody can dunk, for example. But then if you are a stickler for realism, if that's the way you wanted to see basketball games go, then it's not necessarily the game for you, or it's not necessarily the first option that I would recommend. But I was also reminded, playing that game, Derek, of Mark Jackson's very brief stint with the Nuggets at the start of the season. Traded there for Jalen Rose in the off-season, and then traded back mid-season, and then ended up playing with Rose on the Pacers. Yeah, what a weird stint to be captured on the virtual hardwood.
Before I talk about There Goes That Man, Mark Jackson, I want to touch really quick on the NBA Live versus NBA in the Zone piece. So, again, NBA in the Zone 2 came out in 1996. It was doing stuff from a strategy point of view that Live wasn't doing. For example, in 1996 was the release of NBA Live 97, correct? You can't do dribble moves in NBA Live 97.
True.
You can't do anything in relation to trying to get around a defender with a special dribble. In NBA in the Zone 2, you can do crossovers from a standstill or on the move. You can do spin moves, etc. So there are some advantages on the sticks to in the Zone 2. And sure, it's conducted in kind of, I don't know, I guess maybe a little bit more of an arcade fashion, but it's still more tools at your disposal, right? On the sticks adds to the gameplay. So you can see that on that video on the NLSC YouTube, you can see us utilizing those dribble moves. About Mark Jackson, that was a very brief stint with the Denver Nuggets, but he did hurt us in that game. He actually had a couple nice floaters, which look really good in that game. Actually, they're really smooth. And I think he hit a couple threes on us. So he was just another tool for them to compete. And we barely won that game, Andrew.
Oh, yeah. We really had to buckle down in the fourth. Fortunately, as we said, we had the bench to carry us. Yeah,
it didn't hurt having Hakeem the Dream McIlvain out there. Let's put it that way.
J-Mac attack. Absolutely. Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, MBA-Live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at MBA-Live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So our other session, as we stated at the onset of the show, was on NBA 2K13 using the URB. And just the accuracy of that mod and the way that it plays and everything, we were able to jump right into a game and feel like we were playing a game that came out in 1993, reflecting the 92-93 season. And Barkley looks great in that game. All the cyber faces look great. The court, the Dornas, the stadium, everything just looks awesome. However, there was a hiccup in this session, Andrew. I had a game data mod installed, which removes the icons underneath the players. So Andrew and I were co-op. We used the Bulls naturally, but there was no way for us to not lock in a co-op session because we couldn't tell who was on who. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to use MJ all game. I ended up locking on Pippen so Andrew could use his favorite player. I hope you appreciated that.
Oh, absolutely.
But, respect you as a friend. But I locked on Pippen, played a lot of point forward in that game, and we ended up losing this game, and it will at some point go up on the NLSC YouTube because the tendencies and just the overall makeup of that Suns team was done incredibly well by the team at URB, and we were getting pummeled by Dan Marley from three. Dumas killed us. Anytime I was off Dumas, he was attacking the hoop. He was throwing it down. He was doing nice moves around the rim, etc. I had to double Barkley at any opportunity because if I didn't double Barkley, he was going to score on Horace Grant, etc. And I felt like we were really playing the 92-93 Phoenix Suns. I thought that you and I performed admirably with Pippen and Jordan. And in fact, they were really the only ones who did anything for us in that game. I want to say that you scored 32 with Jordan and I scored 37 with Pippen. But NBA 2K13 is just one of the most well-made basketball video games of all time. It's the first year they introduced right stick dribbling to the 2K series, and they executed it in amazing fashion. I can't even believe that they were able to do that in the first year. And those rosters are awesome.
Barkley, an absolute beast in the paint, and trying to beat him on the boards was quite a challenge, and that is where we came up short. Unfortunately, we were with them for most of the game, but the not having the player indicators did throw me off a little bit. So I know I made a few mistakes as well, dribbling out of bounds when I suddenly had the ball.
Possessions, I passed it to Horace Grant, and he ran out of bounds because Andrew was not used to me player locking. Like normally when we play co-op, nobody locks and we just have like a red or blue indicator telling us who's using the player, right? So when I passed it to Horace Grant on those cuts, Andrew forgot at that moment that I was locked. And that is tough when you're not used to playing co-op in that way.
But as you said, we still did an admirable job of competing with a very tough Suns team. And that URB, as we said, is so detailed, all the tendencies, all the faces, everything. And it's difficult not to compare those mods to what they're doing with MyNBA Eras in NBA 2K23 and NBA 2K24. Now look, modding has a distinct advantage in that we're not worried about likeness rights, right? We're operating outside of that system. That's why we release our mods for free. And we can include players that NBA 2K can't license. But you look at some of the lack of attention to detail in MyNBA Eras, and in our Discord, Vin has posted some rather egregious examples of how they got the wrong court, how they've got the wrong stanchion, the wrong jerseys, etc., the wrong team branding. We've talked before about the lack of attention to detail to player ratings, and you had a thread, a Twitter or an X thread some years back, I think it's a couple of years ago now, where you went through the game at the time, just 1% really of those errors, and that still persists in MyNBA Eras. So even beyond the things that are beyond their control, like you can't license absolutely everyone, they're obviously trying, but there are limitations there, just not having that accuracy, and that authenticity is so important. And look, they are doing some ambitious things with MyNBA Eras, with having the branding automatically change. That's really cool. I don't think we've found a way to do that with modding. That has to be done manually and have to fiddle around with that mod when you have it installed. So that is really cool. but the infrastructure is there, and yet they're not paying attention to which assets are being swapped in and out. And look, if it's a minor update, like if you've got a jersey that's changed slightly year to year, that's pretty much the same, look, it's not so bad. But when there's been a complete overhaul to the branding, and when they've got the wrong court throughout a decade, or not switching at the right time, etc., then it does take away from what they're trying to do with that mode. And we said, look, year one, there's going to be some teething problems, there's going to be some shortcomings, but these are the things that they need a couple of dedicated people to just be really working on those details, Derek, and saying, okay, we've got the infrastructure in place, now let's get all the details right. Because mods do it.
Exactly. And I've said it on prior episodes. The reason why MyNBA Eras doesn't get that attention to detail, why you see the Tissot Dornas for like the Kobe era, right? And prior, why you see the basketball sanctions showing like League Pass when League Pass wasn't even there, etc. Why, the courts are wrong, even though they have the rights to the proper court, all of that stuff. Why the just a lot of laziness with that, and a lot of lack of attention to detail, and not putting enough people on those projects. The main reason is because those are not the online modes, right? It's not related. Like MyNBA Eras is not related to my team. It's not related to my career. It's not related to getting people into those online modes. And I think that is the primary reason.
It's not a moneymaker, right? Yeah.
Exactly. It's the primary reason why it's so much of that content is half-weighed. And I'll say it again, that I don't want to hear anybody making the excuses that it's a money issue. They make more than enough money in order to put more people on those projects, to create more cyber faces instead of having so many fakes for players that they actually have the rights to now. Putting people on the project of getting the correct assets that they have the rights to for those teams, whether it be Dornas, stanchions, courts, etc. And when it comes to the tendencies, attributes, all of that stuff, badge assignments and everything, there are people who have been doing it for years in the community, who know their history, who will give the proper attention to detail, and would even do it for free, Andrew. But again, I don't want to hear that 2K doesn't have enough money to pay people to that stuff. Give me a break. It's called a priority issue, and at the end of the day, they really don't care that much. And there is not enough noise made about the inaccuracies for them to actually do something about it. Now, on the other hand, I believe it's LD2K that responded to the WNBA issue. And he said, we're going to look at fixing these issues. Why? Because the WNBA Players Association called out NBA 2K about the unbelievable inaccuracies with the WNBA content in the game. And they even showed examples of the real player next to the cyberface of the player that's in NBA 2K and the WNBA modes. And it's really bad. And these WNBA players, some of them are some of the best in the entire WNBA. They're very well-known players and whatnot. And the WNBA Players Association was like, you guys know you can do better, basically, so we expect you to do better. And 2K had to respond because it's the Players Association, right? So that's the level it takes. That's the type of reaction and the party that would make that reaction, that would force NBA 2K, the developers and whatnot in the company, to take action. So it's not going to be Andrew and Derek,
no,
right? It's not going to be unfortunately, it's not going to be members on the NLSC who's going to spark change. A lot of times it's somebody from the NBA Players Association, like the Retired Players Association or WNBA Players Association. But you're telling me that 2K didn't have enough money or resources to get those WNBA players' faces right? Because if they had assigned those resources that they could have so easily put into place, people that can create those cyber faces, there's so many talented people in the community and whatnot, they wouldn't be having this issue right now of being called out again.
And I think they should be embarrassed that that's what it's taken, that the Players Association has stepped up to put out this public statement to say that you are not doing our players justice. And you kind of wish that the Retired Players Association, the NBA Retired Players Association, would also step up and say, hey, look what you're doing to the legends. Look, you are misrepresenting NBA history. These are great players from the past. You're certainly profiting off them. Do them justice. You kind of wish they'd stand up and say something as well. But those faces are ridiculous. This is not the first time that 2K has struggled to get women's faces right. Even Rachel Demeter, former 2K TV host, her in-game likeness was insulting. So it seems like they've just had this problem getting women's faces and likenesses to look right. I think maybe Doris Burke is the only one that's come close. And
just make a point though, really quick. These aren't even good attempts. Like it's questionable that if they spent more than 5 minutes.
Well, they're not scans.
on the faces that the WNBA Players Association showed. Like they are not even close.
And we've seen the same thing in WWE 2K as well. Some really bad models and faces for the women's superstars in WWE. So yeah, it is a recurring problem with 2K, and I am glad that they stepped up and said something, because I see a lot of pushback when you see NBA players talk about ratings. And yes, okay, if an NBA player says I should be 99 overall, unless you're in the upper echelon of All-Stars, that is a ridiculous claim. But you see Jamal Murray said something about his overall rating, and the response from the 2K account, or it might have been LD2K or Ronnie 2K, probably Ronnie, if anything, was really disrespectful. That's an NBA player. Who are you? You're a digital marketer who not many people like, really. But, they push back on this so much criticism, and really snarkily and really rudely at times. So I'm glad that the Players Association, the WNBA Players Association, stepped up and took them to task, and they're actually having to respond and take responsibility for the poor job they've done. I think it should have happened a long time ago with the NBA Players Association, the Retired Players Association. I mean, they should be listening to fans, the people who are actually giving them money and spending not just every year on buying the game, but also microtransactions and everything. They should be listening to their customers and giving us good content, good value for money. Don't get me wrong, but they've been pushing aside criticism from knowledgeable people for too long, and the people who are actually trying to represent in the games. So, no, this is... I'm feeling a little bit of schadenfreude here, Derek, that they're actually having to acknowledge this and put their hand up and admit to what a terrible job they've done.
You know what one of the best parts of this is, Andrew? The fact that they took to social media and posted this and made it public that they were upset about it.
Yeah.
I think that because of the nature of what 2K has done with historical content and now with the WNBA stuff, for years now, that's the type of action it takes for them to do something. Because if you try to contact support or you try to reach out oftentimes and, make it so like 2K can sweep it under the rug and do silent updates and everything, it doesn't really teach them a lesson.
No.
Right? This teaches them a lesson because it was posted on X. I believe it was also posted on other social media platforms. And then some of the big 2K content accounts on social media, with high followers, etc., they were reposting it, quote posting it on X, etc. So I think that is the best course of action. And remember when I called out, it was a few years ago, when I called out the unbelievable, ridiculous amount of inaccuracies with the classic teams and all-time teams, where Jason Williams had a 0 on fancy pass and Glenn Rice's three-point tendency was 0, and the Mario Chalmers and Mike Conley were a complete copy and paste signature-wise. Billy Cunningham was a copy and paste of Blake Griffin, etc. And I only showed like 1% of the issues, but it was still an incredibly long thread that ended up hitting Reddit, right? And the post on X that I had thousands of interactions. And on Reddit, it got thousands of views and comments and whatnot. So, you know what? Sometimes you got to call these people out in the public space in order to create change.
Absolutely. And with the WNBA situation, I mean, if they're not going to show that league respect, are they going to turn around and say, well, we don't want to be in the game if you're going to do this to us? And then suddenly you have to take out these modes and this content that you've built up, that you have made money off of promoting. You know, you don't want to have that that bad PR either, or have to take that out of the game. Yeah, I'm glad that they did it. I'm glad that more people are willing to stand up and call out these issues. There's always the shills trying to shout people down, but we just can't allow ourselves to be shouted down by the toxic positivity, if you will. And I know that's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but the shilling, the fanboy defense, the fanboy defensiveness of these games. We love basketball gaming, as we've said before. We also do see the positive attributes of 2K24. We talked about them on our initial impressions. In our subsequent shows, we've also talked about things that we don't like as much, but still do like, and or at least how we'd like to see them get better as well. But yeah, you need to call this stuff out, and I'm glad that somebody with clout, the actual players, the association, the union, called it out, and yeah, I was really glad to see it.
Andrew, I'm starting to notice that a lot of the shilling is coming from people who want to get a piece of the 2K pie.
Yep.
In relation to, content creation, or just people who are already part of that piece of pie. People that are, active influencers for NBA 2K. And, or people that already make money off of the content creation related to NBA 2K. I'm noticing that the majority of that shilling, the more I look at social media, the more I'm looking at the accounts that are posting the toxic positivity, like you had mentioned. I think that's a good way to put it. It's mostly, those are the shills, mostly.
It is, and among the fan base, it's the contrarians, or any complaints are wrong. The complainer is always wrong, a trope that we see in entertainment, but it's also something that we see in real life as well. The shouting out, oh, my complaints, my criticisms, they're valid. Your criticisms, they're whining. That's an attitude we see a lot in online spaces, in gaming communities. And yeah, as we've said before, stand with your fellow gamers. People who play these games year after year, okay, we don't have complete insight into everything that goes into coding games and making games, and I'm sure there are things that we don't know and would benefit us to know, but we know how we're being treated, and we know what we like out of basketball games, and we've seen some great games over the years. We know what's good, we know what's bad, we know what we want, and again, we know when we're being taken advantage of or not being given value for money. So don't shout down criticisms like that. I mean, ridiculous criticisms. I mean, if your criticism is that the game isn't doing something that isn't really technically possible, like you're saying, I'm taking all these legendary players and putting them in the current NBA, but then the commentary's not properly acknowledging that they're the stars. I mean, there are limitations on what you can do with customization, right? So if you have expectations that just aren't realistic, then, or if you're upset about something that was never promised, then that's another issue. But there's so much valid criticism, it's coming from a good place, so don't shout it down.
Yeah, I think that people need to make their voices heard. And those are those that are being the shills and shouting at people who are, critiquing the game in an appropriate way. You need to look at the big picture and, what do you want for our basketball video games, right? Like, don't you want the basketball games to be the best they possibly can be? Can't you acknowledge that there's no basketball video game out there that is perfect? Right? Can't you acknowledge that, in order to create a better basketball video game online and offline for all involved, a lot of the critiques that people are shouting from the rooftops over the last few years might help that game and help, consumers enjoy the game more, and more consumers, want to put their hands on the game. So, yeah, I completely agree.
So that is something to keep speaking up about. Again, glad to see that. MyNBA Eras, I hope it does continue to get better. It does seem like they are aware of some of these issues. I've seen some of them being acknowledged, so hopefully they are updated through roster updates and patches and so forth. There are things, obviously, that we can't fix with the MyNBA Eras. We've got a couple of people, MJ Wizards, doing great things with those retro rosters, but can't fix things like changing branding through the years. That is something that has to be done in the back end. So hopefully they do continue to work on that. In the meantime, again, the tip of the hat to all the great modders over the years that have done such great retro season rosters and gone for that authenticity, because it is so important. It can make you forget that you're playing a modern game. You look at the rosters that Stildo and company, and you're involved with that as well, have made for 2K19. The 97 roster is out now as well. Just seeing you guys play that 95 season, obviously that it looks a lot better than NBA Live 95 visually, but I forget that that's 2K19.
Yeah, just that mod is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we were having a blast with that season. We're going to be starting a new one soon. But yeah, it's just all the art. It's the Dornas, the courts, the jerseys, the way the players play, all the cyber faces, having 12, 13 cyber faces, accurate ones per team and everything. It is amazing. I also want to give a shout out to Razor, who works for 2K, making cyber faces. He's been, he was a great member of the NLSC community. He made a lot of great faces over the years. And he's just been knocking it out of the park with some updates to some of the MyNBA Eras players. So he definitely deserves a shout out. He showed a Jahidi White, which is just absolutely spot on. It looks amazing. And he's tackling some of the bench players on these teams. And these guys are not easy to make, but he is just doing such a fantastic job. So shout out to Razor.
Definitely. Fantastic work from Razor. Didn't he share a Calvin Booth, virtual hardwood legend Calvin Booth?
How good was that? That looks exactly like Calvin Booth, and he is very tough to make a cyberface for. But yeah, that looks exactly like him, and he's a video game legend in our house.
But yeah, you never want to be too negative, and we never want to come across that way, but when there are problems, we will definitely call it out. We encourage everybody to do that. But by the same token, when you are having fun and enjoying games, also speak up as well. Sometimes it's easier to be critical, to be negative, than say something when you're enjoying the game, because you're just so busy enjoying the game. But we are enjoying basketball gaming, obviously. Even if 2K24 isn't scratching the itch, so many other titles are. NBA 2K13 and NBA in the Zone 2 were so much fun to revisit this past week. We're going to keep doing that and let you know what we're doing. And as always, we want to hear about what you're playing as well. And speaking of community interaction, Derek, it is time to open up the mailbag.
To the mailman, the pump fake. What an unbelievable dunk!
So I asked the community questions related to gameplay, and we tackled NBA 2K and NBA Live games, past and present. And so we'll start with 2K. So my question was basically, what would be your perfect game, gameplay-wise, using 2K titles from the past, and you can use the present title as well. And the categories that I gave people were shooting, dribbling, passing, driving, steals, blocks, defense AI, offense AI, and overall player movement. Now, I have my list in front of me, so my answers to this question. What about you?
So, looking at the categories, I wanted to be creative, right, Derek? But the more I looked at it, the more I thought for pretty much everything, I would honestly say 2K17. However, offensive and defensive AI, I might actually choose 2K14 or 2K15, and I say 2K14 for PS4 X1, because seeing what my teammates do in my career when I just give them the ball and let them work with it, seeing Terry Hansen, a generated player, make those double spins and make aggressive moves, you don't see that in later games. So I might mix 2K17 with some 2K14 and 2K15. I mean, content-wise, it's going to have to be a much more recent game, but that era of games, that's really my ideal, Derek.
I think I can agree with that in relation to 2K17, because I think that the biggest weakness in that game is the brick wall defense. Right? I think that overall, the driving game is very good in that game once you get past your defender, but there's just a little bit too much brick walling in that game, which can kind of get frustrating, especially if you're playing on the higher levels, Superstar and Hall of Fame. So here is my answer to the question. By the way, I want to point out, you chose a great generation of NBA 2K games, right? And you stuck with the same motion system with your answers. So basically 2K14 through 2K17, you would consider the golden age for you.
I think
for
so. Yeah.
2 titles, and I think that makes perfect sense. So here's mine, and yes, most of my answers are related to NBA 2K17. So shooting, NBA 2K17, dribbling, 2K13, and or 2K17. I think that NBA 2K13 has a little bit more of a street element to the dribbling, but both games, it's just amazing feel. Like the control and feel in both of those games are almost second to none from a dribbling standpoint. So I could go either way. Passing, I really love the passing, both alley-oops, regular passing, skip passes on 2K17, but also on 2K22, Andrew. I like the ability that they threw in on 2K22 for the next-gen consoles to actually properly make outlet passes that are more than like 20 or 30 feet away. So like being able to, rifle it down court like you could in real life for an easy basket. I think that passing overall in NBA 2K22 is really solid. Driving, I would say either NBA 2K14 or NBA 2K16. So I definitely agree with you there. And the biggest reason is, and actually 2K15 as well, I think the biggest reason why NBA 2K17 is not there for driving is just like I said, it's that brick wall defense. Steals, I would say 2K14. For both PC and PS4, and NBA 2K17, so I can go either way. Love the poke steals in both of those games. You can get steals when they are holding the ball with 2 hands, or if they put it on the floor and it's very realistic the way you get them and they don't feel canned, etc. Blocks, again, 2K14 and 2K17, but honestly, just 2K14 through 2K17. I think that that's a great era for not having as many canned sequences on the defensive end, and blocks feel great 2K14 through 2K17. Offense AI, I got to say NBA 2K16, the CPU is such a pain in the butt to deal with in that game. It is absolutely ridiculous how smart they are and how they, the way they use the players to their real life counterparts. So definitely NBA 2K16 for offense AI. Defense AI, I would have to go with NBA 2K14 because I think overall on the PC version and on the PS4 version that they're more disciplined than most of the other, if not all of the other NBA 2K games on the defensive end. I also want to point out on offense AI, I got to give a shout out to NBA 2K19 because the CPU is incredibly difficult to deal with on that game, and they operate very, very realistically from an offensive standpoint. Overall player movement, I got to go with NBA 2K14 for the PC or NBA 2K17. So either one of those I would be perfectly happy with. But yes, NBA 2K17 and that generation of NBA 2K14 through NBA 2K17, those dominate my choices as well.
I think that's where we get the best mix of mechanics and AI and so forth, and controls. And I'd have to agree that driving in particular might have to go with 2K16, maybe even 2K14, because I've had some very satisfying drives with my player in my career. You've seen the highlights, and they've been in some top 10s as well. And yeah, I think 2K17, because of the brick wall defense, I mean, it's not unplayable or anything like that, but yeah, the driving was a bit better in early games in that generation. But it does come down to that generation of games. And again, just seeing the CPU doing smart things. And I posted the highlight on X, and I sent it to you via DM. The CPU, it was a game against the Jazz in my career. I was shutting down Burke's drive, and he just turns his back to me and fires this incredible, fancy behind-the-back pass feed to Derek Favors for the slam. And just that the CPU would do that and try to be elusive and creative and fancy and make that smart play was really cool to see.
The AI NBA 2K14 through NBA 2K16 is awesome. In my opinion, I think on both offense and defense overall, the computer is a challenge. It's a more realistic challenge, and you really get surprised at what the CPU pulls off on the offensive end, like your Trey Burke, Derek Favors example and whatnot. Try playing against James Harden on NBA 2K14, PC, or Next Gen. What a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right. He's hitting tough shots all over the floor. He's operating in James Harden spaces, etc. He's attacking the rim the way James Harden really would. Yeah, I think for artificial intelligence in basketball video games, I think NBA 2K14 through 2K16 might be the best. All three of those titles, 2K14, 15, and 16. So what about for NBA Live, Andrew?
So NBA Live, that's a tough one. Shooting, I would have to say probably NBA Live 18. That's a game that I've revisited recently and really enjoyed. Dribbling might be NBA Live 10. Dribbling might be NBA Live 10. Passing, passing is a tough one because NBA Live has had some rough passing mechanics,
especially on PS4 gen. Those games, Live 14 through Live 19, have really, really poor overall passing mechanics where there's just a ton of delay. Right?
Absolutely.
On the pass itself and on the catch.
So I'd have to say, I might even say NBA Live 10, might even have to go back to a Live 06. Actually, either version of Live 06 has got pretty good passing. Driving, again, I'd have to probably say NBA Live 10 because of the size ups. Blocks and steals, I might go with Live 06 PC and PS2 Xbox, especially with the Superstars, the Freestyle Superstars ones. We saw some really unique steal and block animations in the game we played a couple of weeks ago. Offensive and defensive AI, again, probably going to have to go with that generation of Live 06 to 10, especially when they were starting to bring in the dynamic DNA and the synergy-powered tendencies, really did help players play like their real-life selves beyond the traditional ratings. And overall player movement, honestly, a mix between 06 and 10.
Love it. Love it. We have similar answers again. So here's mine. So shooting, this is going to seem wild, but because there was no signature shots in that game, but just like the feel of taking a shot and hitting a shot, I got to go with Live 2003, Andrew. I'm going to go pre-signature shots. I absolutely was addicted to taking jump shots in NBA Live 2003. I love the way the ball goes in. I love the way the shot feels. If I had to go with a newer title, I like the shooting in NBA Live 10. I don't mind shooting straight up and down in NBA Live 18 either. And NBA Live 19 during the demo gameplay. So those are my answers for shooting. Dribbling, Live 10. Reason being is because they actually had signature size ups in that game. And I think that the dribbling is incredibly tight and a big improvement, even over, say, NBA Live 09. Passing, I also love the passing overall in NBA Live 10, with the exception of alley-oops, which is where a lot of those...
alley-oops.
Yeah, the Live 06 gets the advantage there. So I would say either Live 10 or Live 06 or a combination of both if I could do that. Driving, I'm going to say Live 10 again, Andrew. Live 10 is very popular on my choices. And the biggest reason is because it feels really great to get somebody leaning and get a first step and explode to the rim like you were doing with Jumpin' Joe Alexander and whatnot. Some of the best parts of our sessions on NBA Live 10, and we've had so many of them, is attacking the basket, right? Like, it's so fun to attack the basket in that game, and there's so many cool animations that play out at the hoop. Steals, NBA Live 06. Sorry, but it's the best possibly in video game history for steal mechanics. And it has all of those amazing animations that play out on steals, and it doesn't feel super canned. It's just best steal mechanics in basketball game history, in my opinion. Blocks, NBA Live 10. Why? Because they're not canned. It reminds me of what they did with NBA 2K24 with shot blocking, where they took out the two-man canned animations in relation to it for the most part, and they made the blocks more organic. So I'm going to go Live 10 there. Offense AI, I'm actually going to go with NBA Live 09. Defense AI, that is a tough one. It might be Live 09 or Live 10. And overall player movement, it's tough. I mean, it might be NBA Live 10.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do say that Live 10 was the pinnacle of the series. I don't necessarily agree because there were a couple of other games that were spectacular as well and had a few advantages over 10, but 10 was moving in the right direction, as we've said before, which is why it was so frustrating to see the series collapse with that attempted revamp and rebrand to NBA Elite 11. But yeah, we obviously have some very similar answers there. Not surprising at all. Those are high points in the live series. And it does feel like 06 plus 10 plus a few of the best features from other games would make the best NBA Live. And speaking of alley-oops in Live 10, I was playing the Live 10 demo, as you know, and was amazed at how well the alley-oops were actually working. I sent you some highlights, some clips that I recorded, and yeah, they kind of botched it from the demo, unfortunately.
Yeah, sometimes the demo gameplay is just better, Andrew.
Yeah.
NBA Live 19, the demo gameplay was quite a bit better.
So let's get to some community responses now. iMason KOG says, for shooting, 14, 19, and 22. Dribbling, 19, 20, and 16. Passing, 24. Driving, 11, 20, and 14. Just tone down posterizer a bit. Steals, passing lane 17. On ball, honestly not sure. Blocks, 20, 24, and 14. Offensive AI, 16. Defensive AI, not sure. And overall movement, 2K14, especially the last-gen version.
So I like the fact that he actually credited NBA 2K14 and NBA 2K19 for shooting. I actually think 2K19 is the best for shooting ever since the new motion system was implemented. So between 2K18 and 2K24, 2K19 has the best shooting. You mentioned 2K14, which 14 for both PC and, as you know, for the Xbox One version, does have really solid shooting mechanics, both on the move, in the post, and just straight up and down. So it's fun to take off balance shots, for example, in NBA 2K14. So I agree with him there. I love that he mentioned 2K16 in the dribbling piece. 2K16 is the only 2K that had 4 size-up options: back, front, left, right. When they went to 2K17, they reduced those size-up options to 1, only a front size-up. So 2K16, hard to argue there from a dribbling perspective. And then he also mentions 2K16 for the offensive AI, and I credited that during my opinions and my favorites. And I do think that 2K16 all around was really solid on offense and defense for the AI.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously agree with a lot of those choices as well. I'm not as fond of some of the mechanics in the last few games as much as he is. But yeah, it just goes to show that there's no perfect game as yet. And we would all, I think, take elements of this game or that game. I know I said mostly 2K17, and then I amended a couple of my answers for a couple of the categories. But yeah, there's not been a perfect game yet. We've had some pretty damn good ones, some near-perfect ones, you might say. But I think we'd all take a little bit from our favorites.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I struggled to fit anything in from the past few 2K titles into into those categories for myself personally.
And next up we have Donnell says shooting 15, dribbling 24, passing 24, driving 13, steals 17, blocks 24, offensive AI 24, defensive AI 24, and overall play movement 16. I think a lot of people do favour that old motion system. I'm certainly not surprised. I'm certainly in agreement with them. Obviously a bigger fan of 24's mechanics than perhaps we are. I think steals, 2K17, a lot of people do remember that as having very strong steal mechanics, and that was my choice too.
Yeah, 2K17 is some of the best steal mechanics in 2K history, kind of like Live 06 is for the Live series. I will say this too. I love the fact that he mentioned 2K15 because 2K15 gets lost in the shuffle on that gen because of the greatness of 2K14 and 2K16, right?
Yeah.
So it's like smack dab in the middle of two of the greatest games that 2K ever created. And it just has awesome gameplay. And it actually has some improvements over NBA 2K14 for the Xbox One. For example, the ability to do signature size-ups. In NBA 2K14 for Xbox One, PS4, you didn't have a signature size-up option. So they added some authenticity, and it still has all of that great gameplay for that motion system.
And of course, the first game of that generation to bring in green releases and the shot meter and those overall mechanics that even if you turn the meter off, obviously it still has those mechanics going on in the background. And that is a system that a lot of people do prefer to the old system, the old dice roll of, okay, a perfect release, but it still may not go in. And I really enjoy 2K14, obviously, but there are times when I get a great release, perfect release and everything on a jump shot, wide open with a very high-rated my player, and it just bricks, and it does feel a little bit frustrating when that happens. I don't mind it. I think it still works, but bringing in that system in 2K15, I think a lot of people really enjoyed having a guaranteed make if you could get that green release. If you could hit that perfect release point, you know you're going to make that basket. Obviously, they're still using it today, so that speaks to its popularity.
My guess is, because I know that you use the shot meter, my guess is that NBA 2K17 is your favorite meter as well.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's one of my favorites, and of course the aiming with the stick as well. It was much better done than NBA Elite 11. It sounds like I'm damning it with faint praise, but no, that they actually did get it right that year.
Using the stick to shoot in NBA 2K17 is actually something that feels good and that you feel like you can use consistently, right?
Yeah.
Like, I really enjoy getting in the post and doing like shimmy fades with the right stick and just doing different off-balance shots and whatnot. I think that the right stick implementation in relation to shooting is the best in that franchise's history in NBA 2K17.
And jumping over to the NLSC Discord now, Juicy Shackmeat says 2K14 next gen for dribbling, shooting, passing, driving, offensive AI, overall play movement 2K16, steals, blocks, and defensive AI 2K11.
Yeah, 2K11 doesn't get enough love, right?
No.
Like, yeah, I think that in relation to talking about actual gameplay, it doesn't get enough love. Like, it gets enough love in relation to being like one of or the best basketball video game ever created. But how often do you hear people talk about the strengths of its gameplay?
The mechanics. You don't really hear that in-depth analysis anymore, no.
Right. If the gameplay overall was average or below average, that game wouldn't be considered one of the greatest basketball video games of all time. But people loved putting it on, playing it, playing the Jordan Challenge, using the classic teams, jumping into seasons and everything. I love the fact that he mentioned 2K11. And 2K14 continues to get love because even though it didn't have signature size-ups, even though it was behind on some of the on-court gameplay options of a couple of the later releases on the PS4 gen, it's still just so fun to pick up and play.
And finally, we have one response for NBA Live, also from Juicy Shackmeat, says, steals Live 06 last gen, and everything else Live 10, based on what I've seen and played on Live Mobile, which uses a simplified version of the game engine. And that mixture of Live 06 and 10 basically lines up with what we said.
Right, and those are two games that we love to revisit, right?
Yeah.
All the years later, we put those on regularly and play co-op or head-to-head sessions and whatnot. I think that NBA Live 10, I'll say it again, as I've said so many times before, it's a damn shame that was, for some, they consider it the last great live in the series. And then they tried to do the elite direction. They canceled 12, 13, came back with 14, and then 14 was just so rough and really didn't feel often like a PS4 gen title even. And some of the art in it, just the gameplay was very, very rough. Like, I just can't believe that they didn't capitalize on the solid game that they produced with NBA Live 10.
It absolutely is a shame. And we've said that before, and we'll probably say it again, because whenever we do revisit NBA Live 10, as you noted, we do feel that wistfulness that they didn't build on that they did try to revamp, and that when they did come back with Live 14, it wasn't a case of, we're going to take a few years off and really get this right. It was, we're going to rebuild the team, and we're going to try this, and we're going to stumble with Live 13 and have to cancel that, and then cobble together Live 14, and it's good enough to release, I guess. I mean, we have enjoyed Live 14. It's one of those games, as we've said before, when you revisit it, you do notice some of the stronger points, and you get used to the movement and so forth, but it definitely wasn't the strong return it needed to be. It didn't tip off a great new generation of NBA Live games. So, yeah, NBA Live 10 is, I would agree, the last great or very good NBA Live release. I don't know whether I'd call it the best. Again, I still go back to Live 06 PC being the most well-rounded, and of course having the benefit of modding as well. A lot of nostalgia when we wrapped up in that, but you know me, I love 10 as well, but both are great games, so I would definitely combine them both.
NBA Live 19 had a lot of potential. A lot of potential there. The demo gameplay, for the most part, shined. There was a lot of positive comments about that demo gameplay. People loved what they were doing with the animations, all of that stuff. And then just patches just really hurt that game overall. But as Ryan Parks said on social media on X, he can still, 5 years later, jump online and find 5-on-5 games on NBA Live 19. That's wild. Like, there are still people out there getting on the virtual hardwood and playing online and just overall playing NBA Live 19. So they were doing something right, Andrew. There's a lot of things about that game that did click with people. And hopefully when they do come back, that some of those things that did click with people, if the developers and suits recognize those things and recognize them properly, that the newest Live can really shine.
For sure, and I would encourage those people that are still playing NBA Live 19 to keep playing it, to enjoy it, as long as those servers are around, and hopefully they will continue to support that until they make a decision and make a move on a new NBA Live, and even then, keep it up a little bit longer so that those people who have been so loyal to the series and enjoyed it so much can continue to revisit that and play that. Obviously, we have Live 18 and Live 19 servers still up. I'm hoping they leave 18 up as well for a while, because I'd like to dip into Ultimate Team from time to time, as I've been doing this year, obviously. So, yeah, it's been great to see, and yeah, it does show that there was something to that game that people do enjoy. It's not my favorite, didn't really resonate with me. I was more about the offline traditional content, I guess, but definitely some good ideas in that game.
The biggest issues for me with NBA Live 19 are the amount of canned moments. There are so many canned moments in NBA Live 19 related to, drives to the basket, the way defenders react to stuff and everything. So oftentimes you just feel like you're fighting the game. The fact that the game severely lacks in authenticity overall, you don't have much signature style at all in that game. A lot of the players just kind of run together. And then just delay in the animations, right?
Yeah.
The passing and catching animations, the awkward feeling when you try to do a fade away or something like that, and delay when you're using the joystick for dribbling, etc. So I think that if they can clean it up and make the gameplay more free flowing, get rid of a lot of those canned moments and feeling like they have to load their game with canned animations, and just make the game overall more reactive and add signature style, I think that the newest NBA Live could be fun for a lot of people if they were to come out with a new game.
Agreed. And going back to last week's show, clearly people are interested in having those choices, those options in the space. So the door is still open.
Oh, and also depth. That was the other thing. Live 19 lacked depth.
Indeed.
Overall. Very, very basic, non-deep franchise mode. Couldn't even use multiple teams in that mode. You were only using the legends in, court battles or an ultimate team. They're very, very basic roster editing. Obviously, the depth hurt as well.
No, you definitely need the depth as well as the high-quality gameplay, and yeah, hopefully we get it because, again, people want it.
Fingers crossed. People want, more options, so.
But thank you to everybody who responded to Derek's prompts. Look out for those each and every week. We love interacting with you, hearing what you have to say about basketball games. And yeah, once again, Derek, we all would take little bits of our favorite games and put them together to make the ideal game, the most perfect game possible.
Yeah, I think it's a fun exercise. And I think that what would be even more fun maybe is putting together a mailbag question related to make the worst basketball game. And same categories, and you can choose the mechanics you dislike the most in the 2K series and live series, and see how bad we can make a sports game.
I was just picturing NBA Live 07 for 360 with Kid Sports Basketball and Jam It.
2K18 shoved in there too for a couple things, and
loaded with microtransactions, and I feel a bit ill now. So perhaps we should wrap this up. But, with that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week and every week, either on the NLSC, NBA-Live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us, and of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Yeah, you can find me on X at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on the NLSC, D43, and on YouTube, D43.
I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X. The NLSC is on X and Facebook at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center, and of course give a look to the NLSC itself, NBA-Live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.